power isn't taken. It's cultivated slowly, silently in the shadows. And one of the most underestimated strategies in the game of power is strategic unavailability. When you're always present, always reachable, always responsive, you become predictable, accessible, replaceable. But the person who steps back, who is scarce with their time, selective with their presence, and indifferent to constant attention, that person holds the upper hand. Not because they speak louder, but because their silence speaks volumes. In a world addicted to instant replies and constant validation, your absence becomes your strongest presence. This is not avoidance. This is calculated distance, a move only the powerful understand. Be unavailable not because you're weak, but because you've chosen to operate from a higher ground. Let me start by saying this. You don't need to be rude. You don't need to be cruel. You just need to stop being everywhere all the time. Why? Because availability, constant, predictable, unquestioned availability, is the slowest form of self-erasure. You dissolve your presence until no one feels it. You blur your image until no one sees it. It starts small, a quick reply, a favor you didn't owe, a meeting you didn't need to attend, another yes when you want to say no. And every time you do this, you chip away at your value. Not in money, not in skill, but in perception, which is what really controls power. Now understand this. Perception is power. You don't need to be the most intelligent in the room if people believe you are. You don't need to be the most powerful if people treat you as if you are. But if you make yourself available like everyone else, they'll see you like everyone else. Let me tell you what powerful people do. They withhold, they delay, they vanish. Not out of disrespect, but out of design. Machiavelli would tell you, the prince must learn when to be seen and when to disappear. This is not arrogance. This is strategy. Because when you're always there, your presence becomes white noise, predictable, ordinary, expected. And the human mind doesn't respect what it expects. It values what it can't quite figure out, what it can't quite catch. The moment people can reach you whenever they want, they stop trying. And once they stop trying, they stop caring. And once they stop caring, you are no longer respected. You are tolerated. And being tolerated is worse than being hated. At least hatred still acknowledges your existence. Toleration is silence, indifference, invisibility. Be honest with yourself. Are people calling you because they value you or because they know you'll always answer? Do they invite you because they need your mind or because they assume you have nothing else going on? That's what availability does. It creates an illusion of emptiness. It signals desperation, and desperation stinks. You need to become the kind of person whose time is a mystery, whose presence feels like an event, not a given. You want to be the person who walks into a room and shifts the energy, not because you said something, but because you hadn't been seen in a while. Absence builds anticipation. Anticipation builds value. Value builds power. But let me warn you, when you first pull away, people will get confused. They'll think you're mad. They'll think you've changed. They'll accuse you of being cold, and they'll be right. You are colder now, colder, sharper, harder to reach, because you finally realize that warmth and availability, when handed out to everyone, turns into weakness. You don't need to disappear completely. You just need to become strategic with your presence. Start saying no when you feel the pressure to say yes. Start delaying responses when urgency is fake. Be the person who can't be summoned at will. Be the one who responds when it matters, not when it's convenient for others. And don't explain it. Don't justify it. Let people adjust to your distance. Let them talk, let them guess, let them wonder. That's the magic of being unavailable. You become a puzzle no one can solve, a fire no one can hold. And in a world drowning in noise and attention seekers, your silence will scream. So withdraw, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. Pull back, not to escape, but to rise above. Because when you're not constantly in sight, you become worth searching for. And when you are worth searching for, you are worth respecting. You think you're being kind, you think you're being helpful, you think you're being loyal, but you're not. You're being consumed. One reply leads to another. One favor turns into expectation. One "I'm always here if you need me," becomes a cage you built yourself. Here's the truth. The moment you make yourself easily accessible to everyone, you are no longer valued by anyone. You become a public resource, a utility, and nothing about a utility is respected. Machiavelli knew this. Power is not just what you possess, it's what you withhold. It's what you force people to earn from you, because only what is earned is ever truly respected. Let me break this down for you. If people can text you at midnight and you respond in 30 seconds, if someone needs your time and you instantly rearrange your schedule to accommodate them, if you're always the one checking in, always the one showing up, always the one available, then you are not powerful. You are predictable, and predictability is the enemy of dominance. Let me ask you something. Would you value a treasure you could find on every corner? Would you respect a king who begs for attention? Would you fear a warrior who never walks away from the battlefield? No, because power doesn't announce itself constantly. It appears when it chooses, and its rarity is what gives it weight. You want to be admired? Stop showing up uninvited. Stop giving your time to people who wouldn't bleed a second for you. Stop filling the silence with your presence, because when people always know where to find you, they never search. And if they're not searching, they're not valuing. That's what availability does. It removes the chase, it removes the hunger, it removes the tension, and tension is the heartbeat of respect. Machiavelli would whisper in your ear, "A prince who is too easily reached is a prince soon forgotten." You don't rule by being everywhere. You rule by being rare. But you're scared, aren't you? Scared they'll leave, scared they'll think you don't care, scared they'll replace you. Let them. Let those who can't handle your silence remove themselves. Because the ones who remain, they respect the distance. They see you not as a tool, but as a force, not as a convenience, but as a challenge. Understand this clearly. The more someone has access to you, the more they will take you for granted. Familiarity breeds contempt. An excessive presence kills prestige. You can be kind, but on your terms. You can be generous, but with a price. You can care, but only for those who have earned your presence. This is not cruelty. This is discipline. This is the boundary between a useful man and a used man. Start filtering. Not everyone gets your time. Not everyone gets your energy. Not everyone gets your mind. When you walk into a room, they should wonder where you've been. When your name shows up, it should feel like lightning in a calm sky. You want that reaction? Then stop flooding the world with your availability. Pull back, go silent, resurface when it counts. Because when your time becomes a privilege, so does your attention. And once your attention becomes rare, you control the room without speaking. Machiavelli never wrote about being liked. He wrote about being feared, respected, remembered. And no one respects what is always there. No one fears what is always accessible. No one remembers what is always talking. So train yourself. Let texts go unanswered. Let meetings happen without you. Let people wonder. Make them earn you. Make them wait. Make them question why you're quiet. And in that silence, build your legend. Because availability is the death of mystique, and mystique is the beginning of power. Absence is not weakness. Absence is not neglect. Absence is a weapon in a world obsessed with presence. The smartest man disappears. You don't command attention by being everywhere. You command attention by not being where they expect you, by pulling back, going dark, stepping out of their orbit, and forcing them to feel your absence like a void that can't be filled. That's the paradox. The more available you are, the less your presence means. But the more they wonder where you are, what you're thinking, why you're silent, the more your presence becomes sacred. This is the psychology of power. People chase what they don't fully understand. People respect what they can't fully possess. People fear what they cannot predict. And you, if you're always online, always reactive, always explainable, you give them control. You must withdraw, not to escape, but to dominate silently. Consider the lion. He doesn't roar all day. He vanishes into the tall grass, unseen, unheard, unknown. And in that stillness, he becomes more terrifying than a beast that never stops making noise. That's how you must live. Because when you're always accessible, you become an emotional servant. You are used, not respected. You are convenient, not essential. And here's the cruel truth. When people get too used to you, they stop listening. They stop looking. They stop caring. Not because they're evil, but because that's how human psychology works. The brain devalues anything it can count on too easily. Be water when they expect fire. Be silence when they crave a reaction. Be stillness when they try to provoke movement. You see, it's not about being antisocial. It's about being selectively social. Your attention must become a luxury. Your time must feel expensive. Your presence must be earned. Machiavelli would not tell you to hide forever. He would tell you to strike at unexpected moments. Your unpredictability is your power, and your absence makes your return unforgettable. So next time someone expects you to show up, delay. Next time someone demands a response, pause. Next time they call your name, stay silent just long enough for them to question everything. Why? Because in that void, they will imagine. They will project. They will fear. And that fear is more powerful than anything you could say. Absence makes them doubt themselves. Did I do something wrong? Why didn't he respond? Is he ignoring me on purpose? Yes, you are. Not to hurt them, but to remind them that you are not to be accessed at will. You're not a toy. You're not a fixer. You're not a doormat. You are not theirs. You are your own, and only those who respect that boundary deserve a seat at your table. Now watch what happens when you remove yourself from their daily life. Suddenly, the texts become more thoughtful. The conversations grow more careful. The tone becomes more respectful because now they know you are not guaranteed. You are not permanent. You are not replaceable. And if you walk away, they'll feel it. This is how kings behave. This is how rulers are remembered. Not for being available to all, but for being available to few. And those few were damn lucky. Your silence must become sacred. Your distance must become holy. Your presence must feel like prophecy. Every word you speak must feel measured. Every appearance must feel intentional. Every interaction must carry weight. So disappear, withdraw, be silent. Let the world spin without you. And then return, not to explain, not to apologize, but to remind them you were never theirs. You are always the storm they couldn't control. A man who is always around is a man you can manipulate. A man who is always present is a man you can measure. But a man who's rarely seen, rarely heard, and never predictable, that man is feared. To be unavailable is not to hide. It is to elevate. You rise above the games because you refuse to play on anyone else's schedule. The Machiavellian mind understands this. Power is not always in your hands. Sometimes it's in your absence. Let others gather in the court. Let them talk, gossip for alliances. And you are not there. And that unsettles them more than your presence ever could. When you are unavailable, your influence grows in silence. People begin to craft stories around you. They project strength, mystery, superiority. Why? Because they have no access to the truth, and in the absence of facts, myth takes over. You become a legend, not through force, but through scarcity. When they see you too often, you become normal. When they can't reach you, you become power. You must become the ghost in the room, the whisper behind closed doors, the shadow that shapes decisions even when you're not invited. The king does not attend every conversation. The general does not answer every soldier. The ruler does not explain every move. They watch from above. They let the noise echo beneath them, and then they strike, not out of need, but out of design. This is what the weak never understand. Being everywhere is exhausting. It's reactive, it's desperate. Being unavailable is calculated. It creates leverage, it builds demand, it controls perception. And in the realm of human psychology, perception is power. Machiavelli knew this. When you withhold yourself, people become anxious. They question their worth. They obsess over your silence. They start needing your approval, your words, your attention. And you remain still, not because you are cold, but because warmth from you is a rare flame, a controlled fire, not something they can steal, but something they must earn. This is how the world truly works. The man who is constantly available becomes a resource. The man who is unavailable becomes a standard. One is replaceable. The other is unforgettable. And here's the most ruthless truth. You must be willing to be misunderstood, to be hated, to be resented for not showing up. Because in their resentment, they confirm your power. They wouldn't be angry if you didn't matter. They wouldn't be frustrated if your presence wasn't addictive. You control their emotions simply by choosing when not to appear. So pull back. Be the man who doesn't text back immediately. Be the man who leaves some questions unanswered. Be the man who walks out of the room without announcing his return. And when you do return, make it intentional. Make it sharp. Make it unforgettable. That's how kings move. That's how emperors rise. That's how legends are born. Your presence should feel like thunder. Your absence should feel like winter. If they get too used to you, they'll take you for granted. So vanish. Let them learn your value through distance. Let them wonder if they'll ever have you back. Because when they don't know where you are, they'll feel you everywhere. That is the power of being unavailable. That is the Machiavellian law of presence. Be rarely seen, be deeply felt, be never owned. Let the world orbit around your silence and rule without ever touching the throne. Human nature is predictable. People want what they can't have. They chase the one who doesn't chase back. They crave the one who remains just out of reach. That is why being unavailable isn't a weakness. It's a strategy. Machiavelli would tell you, to be rare is to be powerful. The most desired things in the world are the ones we cannot touch easily. Gold, status, freedom, mystery. They're valuable not just for what they are, but because of how little of them there is. And the same principle applies to you. If you're always around, always responding, always saying yes, you kill your mystique. You remove the tension that makes people respect you. You become predictable, common, and in time, disposable. Let me be blunt. You're either a need or a convenience. Those who are always available become the latter. They are used, not valued. Tolerated, not respected. But when you are hard to access, when your time, energy, and presence become limited, people start assigning you importance. They interpret your silence as depth, your distance as strength, your absence as proof that you have options, purpose, and power. It's not about arrogance. It's about value. Scarcity creates demand. Demand creates desire. Desire creates power. And power keeps you untouchable. You see, the average man is addicted to validation. He gives himself away for crumbs of attention. He answers every message, explains himself to everyone, attends every invitation, and in doing so, he dilutes himself. He becomes background noise. But not you. You're not average. You move on your own time. You don't rush to be understood. You don't bleed for people who haven't earned your loyalty. You don't reveal yourself just because someone asks you. Control access, and with access, you control influence. Even in economics, value is tied to scarcity. Diamonds are valuable because they're hard to find. Limited editions are prized because only a few exist. Rare books, rare art, rare talent. It's the rarity that creates reverence. Apply that principle to your identity. Be the man who doesn't show up for every conversation. Be the man whose presence must be earned, not assumed. Be the man who understands that people appreciate what they must work for. Your availability should feel like a privilege, not a guarantee. Because once someone gets used to you, they stop respecting the weight of your presence. They treat your time like it's infinite and your energy like it's free. You must break that pattern. And yes, people will get uncomfortable. They'll accuse you of being distant, aloof, cold. Let them. That discomfort is a sign the power dynamic is shifting. They're no longer in control of when and how they get access to you. You are. They'll try to guilt you back into being who you were. Always answering, always showing up, always giving. But you're done with that. Your presence is now a statement. Your time is now an investment. Your silence is now strategic. Because here's the truth. When you're too easy to reach, people become lazy with your worth. But when they don't know when you'll return, they remember everything about you. They pay attention to every word you've said. They replay your energy in their minds. They imagine your thoughts, your moves, your reactions. You become unforgettable, not because you were loud, but because you were rare. And in a world that's drowning in noise, Being rare is the loudest thing you can be. So stop making yourself too accessible. Stop explaining yourself to people who haven't earned your truth. Stop diluting your essence by overexposing your soul. Every time you pull back, you create tension. Every time you go silent, you create curiosity. Every time you disappear, you amplify your presence. Not because you're weak, but because you're too powerful to be everywhere. Let them chase. Let them wonder. Because when they finally realize you're not just anyone, they'll realize they can't treat you like everyone.